Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Here's my conversation with CNN's Jake Tapper.
Just talk about what it's like for you having to cover all of these things.
Well, the speaker's race is quite different, obviously, than covering the war. The war, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you from Tel Aviv. That was a very busy schedule and a very difficult thing to cover. Wars are generally very difficult to cover, both logistically and emotionally, because obviously of all the loss and suffering. But yeah, we got a new speaker after a lot of chaos, and I don't even know how many days without a House Speaker for the first time in the history of our nation. His name is Mike Johnson from Louisiana. I actually have known of him and known him a bit since 2005. I was covering a story in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, I think, about prayer in public school. And I met him. He was an attorney representing people who wanted to pray in public school in school districts that were being told that they couldn't do it way back when. And I remember being very impressed with how smoothly he made his arguments, even though they were in defiance of the Supreme Court, or at least the local courts, maybe not the Supreme Court, maybe the local district court. But in any case, I remember being impressed with how logically he made his arguments and how smoothly he made his arguments. And I remember saying to my producer at the time that I would not be surprised if he were a member of Congress soon enough. I did not know that he was going to be the Speaker of the House within 20 years. But anyway, that's Mike Johnson. And then the war obviously happened, started on October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel and killed more than 1,000 people, most of them civilians. And then I went over there a few weeks later, and I was there for about a week and a half. And that was just horrific experience, both in terms of the civilian death toll in Israel and obviously the civilian death toll in Gaza, and just a horrible thing. I mean, we see this is what war is. It's a horrible experience, and a lot of innocent people get killed in the name of the political objectives of different groups. Even if the political objectives are worthy political objectives, somebody might think, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to destroy a terrorist group. Even if you think that, a lot of innocent people are being killed in its aim of destroying that terrorist group, and it's really tragic, and it can be really tough.
Yeah, here at home in Toledo, there have been plenty of protests, and I think the message is getting across. The U.S. is facing a lot of pressure from its own citizens over the amount of lives that are being lost, and these are innocent civilians. So kind of paint a picture for me, to use a journalism cliche, about what it's like being overseas and seeing things firsthand.
Well, I mean, obviously, these things are a lot more complicated than they might seem marching in the streets. I certainly sympathize with anybody who thinks that civilian death should end. I don't like covering any death of innocent civilians. It's horrible. The arguments that one would hear from the Israelis, not just the Israeli government or the Israeli military, but Israeli people, would be, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, and then Hamas broke it. They violated it by coming into our country and killing innocent civilians. And what would a ceasefire today achieve other than allowing Hamas to stay in power? And as much as we hate the innocent Palestinian civilians being killed in Gaza, we need to remove Hamas from power, and we need to rescue our hostages. That's what they would say. And so, I mean, look, these things are seldom as easy as anything you can fit on a bumper sticker or on a sign in a protest. And I think that that's the responsibility of journalists to try to explain the complications of these arguments and these issues, even as we all hate these images coming from Gaza, and I am in no way justifying any action taken by anyone in this war between Israel and Hamas. Our responsibility is to try to explain the points of view as to why this war is continuing. And certainly the Biden administration is telling the Israelis that they want them to be more careful about protecting innocent life. And the Israelis are making their arguments, and the people calling for a ceasefire are making their arguments. And our job is to try to explain all of these arguments in as cogent a way as possible, while not, taking a position one way or the other.
Yeah, it's a loud time. And this is certainly one of those issues that's on the table in the House right now. But recently on Tuesday, the House passed the bill, and then the Senate passed the bill averting a government shutdown. So the House can work and get to work on things. So in terms of going back to Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, what do you think this indicates about the future? Can he be someone who can get both sides of the aisle together and get business done, especially with this war happening?
Well, it was certainly an interesting maneuver, right? Because what he did was something that was on its face responsible. He was keeping the government open. And he did something that upset a lot of the far right members of the Republican conference. By the same token, he has also left the door open for a future showdown. He's made it clear that he thinks that there need to be spending cuts. There does need to be more of a fight over the budget. But just this is not the moment for that fight because of the government shutdown. And Republicans have made it clear, House Republicans, that there does need to be more of a push and pull when it comes to negotiations over the budget. And look, on its face, when Republicans argue, look, we spend more money as a government, we spend more money than we take in. I mean, that's just factually correct. And look, Jaden, it's your future that we're spending. You're the one that's your generation is the one that's gonna have to figure this out if my generation doesn't, because it's the debt that we are running up is one that ultimately, if we don't figure out a way to pay it down, you're going to have to, because it's not just the debt that is a problem; it's the interest on the debt, and the hundreds of millions of dollars that we have to pay on the interest of the debt is money that we don't get to pay as a nation on healthcare and education and technology and infrastructure already. So it's not like they don't have a point, House Republicans, in terms of this fiscal problem. The question is how to solve it. Democrats want to raise taxes. Republicans want to cut spending. And this is a debate that obviously Republicans want to have. And we'll see where Speaker Johnson goes. But right now, he has done what I think most people would consider to be the responsible thing, which is to not shut down the government.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we have these conversations in the short term, but it seems no one wants to talk about the bright American future when we actually have to talk about the bright American future.
I'm old enough to remember, one time there was this debate, and then Obama and one of the deals was in exchange for keeping the government open, Obama set up a commission. President Obama set up a commission. It was called the Simpson-Bowles Commission, or the Bowles-Simpson Commission, I forget, and they came up with recommendations, which were basically raising some taxes and cutting some spending. And then, Republicans refused to go along with the tax increases, and Obama refused to go along with the spending cuts. And then that was the end of that. And, so everybody knows what needs to be done. Just nobody's willing to make the painful steps to do it.
Yeah, federal government is a whole nother world, but then we also have state government. And I know with the limited amount of time, we want to cover as much ground as possible. Ohio attacked a lot of people recently. We enshrined abortion rights in the state constitution, but also passed recreational marijuana to legalize it. So were you surprised by this?
I was. Ohio has a reputation for being a fairly conservative state. I was not surprised actually by the abortion vote, because people tend to privately support and in terms of the general trend has been for people in the privacy of the voting booth whether in Montana or Kentucky or Kansas, to not want the government to have a say in what women can do in the privacy of their doctor's office. So I was not really surprised by that, but I was surprised by the recreational use of marijuana vote in Ohio, because I thought Ohio was a little bit more conservative than that. But I guess there is this trend nationally that people, and whether people want to think it's libertarian or something else, the voters of the country seem to be thinking and saying, when it comes to both marijuana and abortion, that these need to be individual decisions and not government decisions.
And you were, of course, live on election night, and you brought up an interesting point that Ohioans supported both Mike DeWine and JD Vance, but also supported these issues as well. So
it is difficult. It is difficult to reconcile the voters who go and elect conservatives like JD Vance and Mike DeWine, and also vote to uphold abortion rights and legalize recreational use of marijuana. You are an interesting lot in the Buckeye State. It's what makes being a political reporter interesting. Trying to understand and dissect the likes of you in Ohio, but that's what makes my job interesting. I don't say that as an insult of JD Vance or Governor DeWine or Ohioans. I just thought it was an interesting observation because it doesn't seem to square, but that's okay. People don't have to be consistent.
for sure. In Ohio, we like to spice things up. We bring
I appreciate it. I appreciate the Ohio known for its spices, without question.
politically, of course. In terms of what's next for you, what's on the docket?
Well, right now I have to get off this call because I'm working on a script about that's been a big, a difficult script to do, because it's about a very sensitive subject, which is about the rapes and sex crimes committed by the terrorists of Hamas on October 7th, that Israel is finally, because it's been so focused on the war and also on identifying the murders, the victims of the murders, is finally starting to focus on. And that script has been very difficult to do for any number of reasons, including the sensitivity of the subject. I need to focus on that. And as you might understand, when we have a script like that, that's something that a lot of people at the company, at the network, in our news division look at. Journalism is a very collaborative endeavor quite often. And so that's something I need to work on. But I did want to make sure that I got a time to talk to you. This does not have to be the last time we speak. I admire your gumption and your ambition, and it fills me with hope that somebody like you is interested in journalism. You are a credit to our profession, and I know that you will come someday and replace me and take my job, and I look forward to it. And I just ask that that you're nice to me and you still let me come on the set on occasion to offer, I'll be like one of those old guys that comes on and makes observations on election night. And I just hope you let me do that every now and then. That the way that sometimes they let old anchors come back on election night and stuff to make an observation every now and then. That's all I ask. That's really all I ask.
I would be honored.
Thank you.
So much for your time. I appreciate it.
And that is this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson. Thanks to Jake Tapper for joining me. Thank you for watching, and have a great week.